ODOT is currently proposing an I-5 Interstate Bridge replacement, IBR, with a clearance over the Columbia River of 116 feet at a minimum, and it could be even higher, as the Coast Guard is requesting 178 feet of clearance to accommodate river traffic. This design is essentially the 2012 Columbia River crossing proposal, as shown in this slide. ODOT's proposal would increase the height of not only the bridge itself, but also the approaches, including the current I-5 interchanges on Hayden Island and downtown Vancouver. Such a bridge would create a degraded environment for people and businesses near the freeway. The steep, unsafe grades would be difficult for all bridge traffic, especially heavy trucks, not to mention bicyclists, pedestrians, and wheelchair users. This is not equitable or climate-friendly transportation. But there is no need for such a high bridge. A new bridge could have a clearance of only 72 feet, with a lift span to increase it to 178, just like the current bridge. The primary objection to a movable span for the new bridge is the traffic disruption caused by, quote, frequent bridge lifts, unquote. But the number of lifts could be reduced by 90%, even before a new bridge is built, with a modification to the BNSF rail bridge just downstream from the current I-5 bridge. Here's how this would work. Viewed from downriver, with the railway bridge in the foreground, this photo illustrates the difficult right turn maneuver heavy barge traffic would have to negotiate in order to go under the high point of the existing I-5 bridge. The straight brown line shown on the left here provides a safe, relatively easy path between the railroad bridge and the I-5 bridge, but it requires a bridge lift on the existing I-5 bridge. And this is the reason tugboat operators must frequently request bridge lifts on I-5 during all hours of the day. Swinging over to the 72-foot high point of the existing I-5 bridge is too difficult to maneuver for these large ships. This configuration, in other words, forces river traffic to request I-5 bridge lifts, even though over 90% of the river traffic could easily fit under the high point of either the existing I-5 bridge or a new bridge of the same height, if it were not for the sharp turn required to do so. This picture shows a barge being pushed downriver after passing under the I-5 lift span. Traffic is no doubt still backing up in Oregon and Washington, waiting for the lift span to lower into place and for the gates to be raised. Maneuvering a heavy barge downriver is no easy task. Guiding it through the long, narrow swing span opening in the railway bridge with concrete piers on one side is difficult and dangerous. But a new lift span, south of the swing span and located near the central channel of the river, would provide a much safer course for tugboat operators. This chart identifies I-5 bridge lifts in 2004. It shows how vessels between 51 and 60 feet above water level resulted in 525 bridge lifts in 2004. This chart shows the number of I-5 bridge lifts that could be eliminated with a replacement of the swing span on the railroad bridge with a better placed lift span. 54 lifts versus 604 lifts in 2004, a 91% reduction. This diagram shows how a new lift span on the BNSF bridge would provide a much easier to negotiate path for barges and other large ships, allowing them to pass under the 72-foot high points of both the existing bridge and the new bridge that could be built just upstream from it. Note that the new opening on the railroad bridge is much wider and closer to the center of the river channel, and no longer has a long concrete wall on one side of the opening. This new lift span on the railroad bridge would eliminate about 90% of the bridge lifts that tie up I-5 traffic today. Even those few ships that would still need to use the lift span would not have anywhere near as difficult a maneuver as the one currently required to swing over to the high point of the current bridge. This new configuration would benefit interstate road traffic, river traffic, and railway traffic. It is truly a transportation project rather than just a highway project. This project could be completed in a relatively short time. The cost could possibly be covered in part or in whole by funds allocated through the 1940 Truman-Hobbs Act. Oregon is powerfully positioned to leverage federal funds for such a project. This photo shows another BNSF Railroad bridge on the same rail corridor, crossing the Willamette River just upstream from St. John's. This 1908 bridge originally had a swing span similar to that on the rail bridge over the Columbia. That old swing span was replaced with a lift span in 1989. When this lift span was installed, rail traffic was disrupted for a mere 72 hours. The 1989 cost was about $40 million. That would be $87 million in 2021 dollars, less than half in 2021 dollars of what has already been wasted on the 2006 to 2012 CRC design. This proposal was primarily developed by Jim Howell of AORTA, the Association of Oregon Rail and Transit Advocates. It is part of a more comprehensive alternative to the IBR project, the Common Sense Alternative, a description of which is available on AORTA's website, aortarail.org/issues. AORTA encourages you to advocate for the sensible way to dramatically decrease the number of bridge lifts required on the I-5 corridor across the Columbia River. Legislators in both Oregon and Washington need to know there is public support for this low-cost, relatively easy solution that could be implemented even before any new bridge is built. Thank you for viewing this presentation.